Welcome to Analytics Nexus 2019, the premier virtual event for analytics best practices. This presentation is titled Keys to a Best-in-Class Adobe Analytics Classification Process and will be presented by Ann Salyor. This is just one webinar in a whole series of presentations you have access to beginning today. A few quick reminders before Ann presents. At any time, you can interact with this presenter or other presenters with questions and/or comments on Slack. The Slack address for Analytics Nexus is analyticsnexus.slack.com, and you should have received an email invitation to join if you registered in advance. If you didn't receive that email, you can find an invitation link to the Slack in the menu below, as well as in the resource list. Once you log into Analytics Nexus Slack, you can find the channel for Ann to engage. You can also engage with us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @analytics_nexus. Finally, for questions on Analytics Nexus or Claravine, which is producing this event, feel free to email us at info@claravine.com. This session will be presented by Ann Salyor. Ann is an experienced digital analytics architect currently working at Claravine. She has held positions in paid media, analytics, and consulting, and holds multiple certifications across the Adobe and Google stacks, as well as tag management tools. She enjoys helping clients improve data quality and getting the most out of their data analytics tool. Ann, I'll turn it over to you.
Today we'll discuss some processes you need to undertake to create a best-in-class Adobe Analytics classification process at your company. We'll go through which classifications you might want to build, how you should populate them, defining your long-term maintenance strategy, and some next steps you can take to bring your classifications to the next level. So first of all, which classifications should you build? That's the question that you'll be faced with when you first implement them, or you're going through a re-implementation or initial implementation of Adobe Analytics. Before we get into the details on that, I want to make a few assumptions. One is that you already have an Adobe Analytics implementation, you know what it will look like, or you're in progress with plans for an implementation. This will be applicable to Google Analytics and Adobe Analytics at some level, but a lot of the terminology that I use will be Adobe Analytics specific in this session. I'm also assuming that you have at least one person dedicated to supporting your analytics implementation after it's gone live. It's important to have on-staff support and dedicated resources to help maintain what you've built. And thirdly, this is probably assumed by the fact that you're here, but we're also assuming that you care about improving the performance of your site and your marketing efforts, and that's why you're undertaking this journey. So when you're planning classifications, this process is not too different than planning an overall analytics implementation. The first question for both is the same. What do you want to achieve? This is a critical question to building the right data points to know if you're succeeding or not. You can also ask, how do you need to group your data to know if you achieved what you wanted, which is a question that classifications can help answer. One way to get at this, and a common question that really strikes at the heart of this, if your site and all of your marketing were completely eliminated and you had to start from nothing, what would you actually need? What are the critical pieces you would need to function? This can help you define what's truly important. The overall process of planning an implementation can be defined by the digital marketing measurement model on Avinash Kaushik's website. The first step, of course, being to identify your business objectives. After that, you can identify which technologies you need to achieve those, which is what's defined in the goals and strategies step. Once you know what your objectives are and which technologies and strategies will take you there, you can define the key metrics or performance indicators that support those objectives. From there, you can identify the targets. So, for example, you want to increase revenue by 5% this year, and then valuable segments. how you'd like to split the data or group it in order to truly see different behavior patterns. There's a lot more detail at the link on the first bullet point here, and this is a valuable exercise to undertake with your own company. And in the process of following these steps, you may uncover some dimensions about your data that you'd like to capture, but you're not currently capturing. And if any of those relate to existing variables that you're tracking, they might be good candidates to add classifications to. We'll go through a 5-step process to have targeted questions to help you establish your best-in-class analytics classification process. The first question, who is running the effort and who is it targeted to? You can define which internal or external teams are responsible for this item. Which teams consistently produce outstanding results is one of the questions that you'll be able to answer by tracking this piece of information. And it will be helpful to you to allow you to group all efforts created by a single team together easily, rather than having to go into your report after the fact and pick out who created each effort. You can also decide if the effort is directed to a particular customer segment. If you're currently doing your marketing according to predefined customer segments that your business already uses, it's worth tracking this information about your campaigns so that you know if the segment is responding the way that you expect. This lets you compare the intent of the marketing against who's actually responding to it. So, for example, if you marketed something just to members of your loyalty program and you end up seeing a lot of response from first-time visitors to the site that haven't logged in any time that you can see in the past, then perhaps there's some trouble with your login, or perhaps your marketing is not truly reaching the people that it needs to, or there may be an issue with the authentication or screening process that you're using to gate this marketing. This can also help you do things like catch fraud. So, for example, if you have an internal offer that's directed toward employees only, and people who are not employees are responding to it, then you know that it's not reaching its intended audience, and perhaps there's something else at play. To truly identify these types of scenarios, you need to know which segment the campaign was targeted against. Some things that you might track in terms of who is running the effort: you may wish to include the name of the agency that's running the marketing, the name of the internal team that's running the effort, a particular person who's directing the initiative, or for segments, perhaps the segment name that your company internally refers to. For example, returning customers, loyalty members, etc. Yes, you can already track in most analytics solutions new versus returning visitors and people who have logged in, but that only tells you what's actually happening on your website. That doesn't tell you the intent of the marketing that you're putting out. So by tracking the details of the marketing effort and comparing them to the behavior on the website, you're able to make the connection between your efforts and their results. The second step, what is the effort called? This can take different forms depending on which type of item you're tracking. For external marketing, you might ask yourself, what channel am I running? If you're tracking something on your website itself in a different variable, you might determine if this is a personalized effort versus a static message displaying on the site, so you can compare the effectiveness of both types of messaging. If you're tracking some other type of variable outside of marketing, you might want to know how the company internally refers to this item so you can easily segment on that. For marketing reasons, it's very important that the effort name be included so that you can have the right foundation to build your marketing channel processing rules. If you're using the Adobe Analytics marketing channel processing rules to identify your channels, you need to have a piece included in your tracking code that identifies what channel specifically is running. This may be abbreviated in your tracking code, for example, SEM rather than paid search, or SOC instead of the full word social, but in your marketing channel processing rules, you might wish to categorize these things into internal groups. In order to do so, you might look at social, SEM, email, all other types of marketing efforts that you're doing, and make sure that you have a consistent nomenclature. For other types of on-site marketing, you might note whether it's an on-site banner, a personalized hero image, or any other item that appears on your website that you're looking to track. The third step, you want to determine where the effort is located. Again, this can take shape differently depending on how it's applied. In the case of external marketing, you might ask which specific platform is being used to perform this marketing. In terms of an email, you might ask which region of the email the link lives in, or perhaps which countries or locations the marketing effort is being directed to. In the case of on-site marketing, you might be referring to a particular region of a page. And for other types of reporting, you might also have regional or location components that can be applied. As in the previous cases, this allows us to compare the intent of the marketing to actual visitor behavior. So if we're trying to run a campaign that's targeted to the EU, and we're getting a lot of response from visitors in the US, then we may have a problem with our targeting, or the email may be frequently forwarded, or our link with our tracking code may have been displayed on some US site. And we can take steps to investigate and see which of those scenarios might have occurred. Some examples of where efforts are located from a marketing perspective might be the name of the platform like Facebook, Google, or LinkedIn. From a location basis on the page or email, you might use header and footer. And for on-site, top nav or left nav. And regionally, you might have categories like the Americas, EU, specific region names, and other geos that are important to your business. The fourth step, when is the effort running? For external marketing, this might be as simple as the start and end dates of the campaign. For on-site marketing, you might want to know when this piece of content went live on your site and if there's a planned date to retire it. And for other types of reporting, there might be a time-related component involved, depending on the details of the effort. This allows you to know when to expect activity in reporting. So if you're looking at a report for the month of February and you don't see any activity for this campaign, you'll know that the tracking's not broken because the campaign is not scheduled to start until March. Some examples of time-based values that you may wish to collect are specific dates the campaign is running, time frames, perhaps the campaign is seasonal, or there may be individual time divisions specific to your company, such as a particular quarter or other division that your company uses for fiscal reporting. The final question to ask yourself to determine which classifications you might want to use is why you're running the effort. In the case of external marketing, what do you hope to achieve with this marketing? For on-site marketing, what behavior are you trying to encourage by people interacting with this item? And for other types of reporting, just asking what the goal is. And this allows you to compare the effort against the right metrics. For example, if you're running a display campaign just designed to attract awareness to your site, and you're using conversion metrics to monitor that campaign, that may not be the best combination of goal versus metrics. By tracking the goals, you can make sure that the way that you're evaluating the campaign is aligned with its goals. You might track awareness versus direct response. For on-site marketing, the goal might be to improve the time on site or to increase the click-through rate from page A to page B. Once you know what that goal is, you can more easily determine if you're achieving it. The next big question, after defining where the effort is running, what it's called, when it's running, why it's running, and who's running it and who it's targeted to, is how you will actually populate your classifications with data. This bears some thought and investigation, since this determines the quality of data that you'll get out in the end. There are many different ways to populate your classifications after you create them. One is the manual uploads, where you download the template from Adobe Analytics, fill it in manually, and then re-upload it. This can be time-consuming, has to be done on a regular schedule, takes time out of somebody's day, and it can be error-prone depending on if there are certain special characters in your data that might become affected by the reserved characters or the format of a CSV. For example, if you have extra commas somewhere in that data, it can just end up taking time away from an analyst's time that might be better spent doing real analysis. You also have Classification Rule Builder. To use Classification Rule Builder, you use regular expressions to parse the different pieces of your tracking code into different chunks, and then you can use these to populate your classifications. This requires that everything be condensed into the tracking code itself, so it can make the tracking codes quite long and difficult to read, or on the flip side, it can make them too easy to see what your marketing efforts are, and your clients and competitors can discover what you're doing quite easily. You might wish to use a more obscure format, but with Rule Builder, everything needs to be there in the tracking code. You must maintain the regex to split it apart, and the data has to be in the perfect format coming in for you to be able to split it effectively. If it's not, then you might end up writing really complex regex or having some data not be classified because it's coming in the wrong format. A third option is to automate uploads through the Adobe Analytics API using the Claravine platform. This is quick and scalable, makes sure that everything's in the right format every time, and gets the data in very quickly. And this has some advantages over the manual upload efforts where somebody's having to maintain them over time and undertake a lot of manual manipulation to get the data in there. You may wish to use a combination of Classification Rule Builder and automated uploads, or ideally you can just use the automated uploads and have all of your participants put their tracking codes in through the Claravine platform and then have the appropriate details about the campaign pushed directly into the classification fields that you create. It's also important to consider your long-term maintenance strategy. Anything you set in place, either in your general implementation or specifically in your classifications, has to be done with a long-term eye to the health of the data. You can ask how you will ensure that your data is correct and continually up to date, especially as turnover occurs within your company or within your team. If you have a manual process that works for you, but let's say that you're sick or gone for an extended period of time, or you leave the company, how easy is that process to pass on? And will someone undertake it with the same diligence that you are? You might also ask how frequently to review your classification strategy. You want to ensure that what you're tracking is still relevant over time, and your focuses may change depending on your marketing strategy as it evolves over different months and years. It's also important to ask who should be involved in these ongoing efforts in determining the right classifications to use. You want a good cross-section of your marketing and analytics organization, as well as some of the consumers of the data that comes out, to make sure that you're all aligned. And you might also wish to establish a governance review for the first time, or integrate into a pre-established governance review cycle that your company might already possess for your site or your app. Anytime that you can integrate the classification review into a more general review allows it to be taken seriously as a vital part of data collection. So once you've defined your classifications and identified an ongoing process to maintain your strategy, what are some of the next steps that you can take to move from an emerging user of classifications to a leading organization? There are 4 attributes that we'll discuss across your vision, alignment, sophistication, and optimization efforts. Looking at your vision, in the emerging category, you might not have unified planning on campaign priorities and tactics. Different parts of the organization may not be talking to each other. As you evolve, you may develop pockets of strategy within individual functional areas, but there might not be a uniform vision guiding everything together. As you become more advanced, ideally you have executive support and planning sessions across different channels and teams so everyone is aligned. And those sessions become more regular and more effective as you continue. In terms of alignment, you may be today executing your campaigns in silos, and again, there might be a lack of communication across different teams. As you evolve, the teams will better coordinate together on execution strategies, as well as on their tracking process and taxonomy. And leading organizations have a fully automated governed process to ensure uniform tracking across teams. In terms of sophistication, you may start by lacking data clarity into the performance of each platform. On a foundational basis, you might have basic measurement of campaign and experience results that you're running, but that might be it. There might be limited measurement, and it might only be for some channels, perhaps. As you evolve, this tracking will become more consistent and be tied to strategic goals that you set. And this tracking becomes even richer across leading organizations. Using this data for optimization and marketing decisions may not be present if you're just starting out. The data might not even be used. You might just be using anecdotal results to make marketing decisions. And the data might be so messy that there's a lot of ETL required to transform it into a usable format. As you continue to evolve, your optimization may be done within channels, but not necessarily communicated across channels. As you become more advanced, you can use your marketing data because it's consistent to make uniform decisions about the true path that users are taking through your different marketing efforts. And as the data becomes cleaner, it becomes less necessary to spend all that time cleaning it. And with leading organizations, the data is clean from the beginning, and you can make decisions based on unified rich analytics across all channels and use them to optimize your marketing experiences. To summarize, today we've discussed the 5 steps that you can take to ensure proper classification structure for your organization, what you can do to populate the classifications appropriately, and what you might do to maintain your classifications long term. If you'd like more details on how the Claravine platform can help support this process, you're welcome to reach us at the URL listed in this slide, claravine.com/contact-us. If you'd like to look at my work specifically, you're welcome to read my blog at analytics.com or reach me on Twitter at analytics. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you've enjoyed our presentation.
Thank you, Anne, for sharing this information with us. This has been a very interesting presentation. Just a reminder to our guests, you can engage Anne Salyor with questions or comments at her Slack channel on Analytics Nexus Slack. Please enjoy the rest of Analytics Nexus.